My name is Jose Garcia.
How old are you?
I am 47 years old.
Where do you work?
I work at Sierra Conservation Center, which is a correction facility for the state.
Do you deal with
state prison. Okay. First of all, I'm the institutional gang investigator for the institution. I deal with the documentation of tattoos of gang members, either sureños, norteños, Bloods, Crips, Asian gangs, also skinheads and outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Why are a lot of those gangsters there?
Most of these guys are there mainly because where the area where they're from, the neighborhood. Most of these guys either have relatives, cousins, dads, brothers that are doing time, and they're more or less creatures of habit. They're of their own environment. So if you have somebody in the street that's from the same neighborhood and sees the type of violence and the gang activity, they fall into it. So for them, it's just a way of life.
And how are the living conditions at the jail?
Actually, the living conditions are really good. They have 2 hot meals a day. We give them a sack lunch for lunch at noon. They have cell living, which is in a 6x6 cell. They have access to the yard every hour. So they can be in their cell, or they can be in the floor program in the building, or they can go out to the yard and exercise.
What's the worst thing any of the gang members have done at the jail?
Well, I would say 80% throughout the institutions, the department is in charge of 33 prisons in the state, and our institution is one of them. Probably, I would say 80% of the gang members are involved in extorting other inmates or pressure them into either bring them drugs, or the dealings with drugs, or assaults on other inmates. But most of the time it's because it's gang related. We've experienced a riot, for example. We just had a riot on Saturday, which involved approximately 400 inmates, which was the whites, the Southern Mexicans, and the blacks, which included 2 factions of the blacks, the Crips and the Bloods, and the 415s from the Bay Area. So really, we've had stabbings. I've seen where an inmate got stabbed in his cheekbone. The weapon went all the way through and came out here. We've had where inmates got stabbed and slashed with razor sharp razors that they'll use a toothbrush, dental floss, and they'll tie it to their toothbrush, and they use that, and that's called a tomahawk. A tomahawk. So types of those assaults are common in a correctional facility, especially when they're gang related. They have inmates that either are targeted by their own gang to commit an assault, and if they don't do it, they will be targeted if they don't do it. So it's, in a way, it's kind of how they have like peer pressure from the gang itself.
What's one of the worst things you've experienced while working at the jail?
Well, since I've been at that institution, it's probably that riot that we had Saturday night. The riot continued for about 9 minutes. If you picture yourself a 2,000 inmate yard with 40 dorms, and half of those 20, you got 20 dorms outside, and you got approximately, I would say, from either 25 through 27 inmates per dorm out in the yard, and you have the yard that goes off, and they got inmates fighting, and you're waiting for responding staff. And the first line of staff that's on the yard, we only have 8 officers. So 8 officers, 1 sergeant, 1 lieutenant. So you figure that's what we have. As far as to subdue these inmates, we only have batons, pepper spray, and gas grenades that we throw out there. But I mean, when you have a large group like that, you know, we have responding staff from the other yards, from the level 2 and from the level 1 and the level 3. So I mean, this incident went on for about 9 minutes. As far as inmates fighting, we tried to, have them stop from fighting. They got up and they continued fighting. So, I mean, that's probably the worst that I've dealt with in the last 24 and a half years since I've been there.
At the jail.
Most of these gang members, most of these gang members, I would say more than 50% of these guys are career criminals. They commit crimes out in the street, they go to prison, and they're creatures of habit. Most of these guys are third termers, fourth termers, which means they come back to prison those many times after they commit crimes. Usually these gang members, they don't, as far as their family values, at one particular time they weren't embraced by their family, so they have to look out for other gang members to influence them into doing things. So they use the brainwashing, you would say, way of dealing with the gang as being part of their family. So I would say that these gang members are, they're out in the street. They're not influential as far as being somebody, like you see a student or you see somebody that's got an education or something. But in prison, they have a statue of where they're somebody. You can, for example, you can have somebody running a whole yard, 1,000 inmate yard, and he has access and he controls that yard by just saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and extort certain individuals for bringing drugs. We're going to extort certain individuals for their canteen, for their commissary. So I would say that usually these gang members are more influenced by the gang itself than being their own person.
Okay. Well, that's the end to all our questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.